Alright, hello everyone, welcome back. I don't know why, but I've got a very random question in my head today. You know when people talk about British food, why is it always fish and chips? Like, is that really all people eat?
That's such a classic one. It's funny though, because people still say that with a straight face.
Exactly. And I used to believe that as well, to be honest. I just thought, okay, British food, probably a bit plain, a bit beige.
Beige is quite accurate, actually. That's quite a brutal way to describe it, but I get what you mean.
And breakfast as well. I had this image in my head. Just a cup of tea, maybe some toast, and that's it.
I mean, some people still do that, let's be fair, but that's definitely not the full picture anymore.
Alright, now I'm curious, because from what I see, people are ordering more, eating faster. I wouldn't have guessed things are changing in a good way.
That's the interesting bit though. Both things are happening at the same time. On one hand, yeah, people want convenience, but then there's this other shift. People are starting to care a bit more about what they eat.
That feels a bit unexpected, I have to say. So what, like healthier food or just better food?
It's not just about being healthy, it's more like people want food that actually feels interesting.
Interesting how? Because interesting and British food don't always go together in my head.
Yeah, that's exactly the kind of thinking that's a bit outdated now.
Outdated? That sounds serious. All right then, I feel like I've missed something here.
Let me put it this way. If you still think British food is boring, you probably haven't been paying attention to what people are actually eating these days.
All right, now I'm listening, because clearly I've been living in the wrong version of Britain.
No, you're not alone in that. But things have definitely moved on a bit. And once you start noticing it, you realise it's not just about food, it's actually about how people live now.
That already sounds more interesting than I expected. All right, go on then. Where do we even start?
You'd be surprised how quickly that old image falls apart once you actually look around a bit.
I mean, I still picture the usual things though. Fish and chips, baked beans, maybe something a bit heavy on a plate. It doesn't exactly scream variety.
That's fair. Those dishes are still around, but they're not really the centre of the story anymore. What's changed is the range. You walk through somewhere like central London now, and it's just everything. Different cultures, different flavours, all mixed together.
Everything sounds a bit dramatic. Are we talking about proper restaurants or more like casual food?
Both, actually. That's what makes it interesting. You've got high-end places doing really creative stuff, and then just around the corner, there's street food that's just as exciting. There was this ranking recently, and London was named one of the top food cities in the world, which, if you think about the old stereotype, feels a bit unexpected.
That does sound like a completely different picture. I wouldn't have London with Food City before.
That's exactly it. The reputation hasn't quite caught up with reality yet. Take places like Borough Market, for example. You go there and suddenly you're not just looking at British food anymore. You're looking at South American dishes, Asian street food, things you probably didn't expect to find in the UK.
So it's not just a few international restaurants here and there. It's actually quite embedded in everyday life.
Exactly. It's part of the routine now. People grab a Venezuelan arepa for lunch, or something Thai, or maybe a bowl of pho. It's not unusual at all.
That's actually quite cool. I didn't realise it was that normal.
And the funny thing is, the traditional stuff hasn't disappeared. It's still there, just no longer the only option.
So you could still have your classic breakfast or something, but then the next day you're eating something completely different.
That's about it. It's more flexible now. People don't feel like they have to stick to one style of food.
That actually explains something. I've noticed menus getting a bit more mixed, I guess.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. You'll see combinations that didn't really exist before.
Like what? Give me an example, because I'm trying to picture it.
All right, imagine something sweet and spicy together, like chili with honey, or a sauce that's both sharp and slightly sweet. It sounds odd at first, but people really enjoy that contrast now.
I'm not sure how I feel about that. It sounds a bit risky.
That's exactly the reaction most people have at first. But then you try it and it kind of grows on you.
So people are basically becoming more adventurous with food?
I'd say so. There's more curiosity now. People don't just want something familiar, they want something a bit different.
That's quite a shift from the safe and simple image I had in mind.
Exactly, and that's why that old idea of British food being boring doesn't really hold up anymore.
I feel like I've been judging it a bit unfairly now.
You're definitely not the only one. It just takes a bit of time for people to catch up with what's actually happening.
That mix you mentioned earlier, sweet and spicy together, I'm still thinking about it. I can't quite decide if it sounds amazing or just completely wrong.
That hesitation is exactly why it's interesting. Most people react like that at first.
Because in my head, those two things don't really belong together. Sweet is sweet, spicy is spicy. Why mix them?
That used to be the thinking, but now people are much more into contrast. Not just one flavour, but layers of flavour. There's even a word for it now. People call it Swicy. Sweet and spicy combined into one.
Swicy? That sounds a bit made up.
It does, but it's everywhere now. You see it in markets, restaurants, even packaged food. There was a food report recently saying that this kind of flavour, sweet cum spicy, is exactly what people are looking for now. Something that keeps your taste buds interested.
So it's not just about being strong or spicy, it's more playful.
That's a good way to put it. It sort of shifts as you eat. You get the sweetness first, then the heat comes in, sometimes the other way round.
All right, now that actually sounds quite nice. I can imagine that.
You see things like hot honey, for example. People drizzle it over fried chicken or even pizza.
Pizza? That's unexpected.
It sounds strange until you try it. The sweetness kind of softens the heat, and at the same time it brings out more flavour. There's also things like chili jam, which works surprisingly well with cheese.
So it's not just about adding spice, it's about balancing it.
Exactly. It's about balance and contrast. You don't want one flavour to take over completely.
That reminds me of something. I once tried a sauce that was sweet at first, then suddenly quite sharp. I didn't know how to react.
That's exactly the experience people are going for now. That little surprise. You'll even find dishes where the sauce cuts through the spice, so it doesn't feel overwhelming. It keeps it enjoyable.
I like that phrase, cuts through the spice. It sounds quite satisfying somehow.
It's a useful one, actually. You'll hear it a lot when people describe food here.
I think what surprises me the most is that people are open to this kind of thing now.
That openness is probably the biggest change. People aren't just sticking to what they know anymore.
So food becomes a bit more experimental.
In a way, yes, but not in a complicated way. It's more like small twists on familiar things.
That actually makes it less scary.
Exactly. It's still recognisable, just a bit more exciting.
Now that you mention all these changes, I'm suddenly thinking about tea. Because, that's the one thing people always associate with Britain, right? Tea is basically part of the identity. But then again, how much can that really change? Isn't it just tea?
That's what I used to think as well. It felt like something quite fixed. But lately, it's been shifting in a way that's actually quite noticeable. Not dramatically, but enough that you start to feel it.
What kind of change are we talking about? Different brands or something more than that?
It goes beyond brands. The whole idea of drinking tea feels different now. Before, it was just something you did without thinking. You put the kettle on, dunk a tea bag in, and that's it.
Yeah, very automatic.
Now, for some people at least, it's becoming more of an experience, something you actually slow down for.
That already sounds quite different.
You'll see people going out specifically for tea, not just grabbing whatever's at home.
Wait, like how people go out for coffee?
Exactly, but instead of a latte, they're ordering matcha or hojicha, something a bit more crafted.
That feels quite modern in a way.
There's a place in Borough Market, for example, where people line up just to get a proper matcha.
Not the quick version, but the ceremonial kind.
Ceremonial? That sounds quite serious.
It is, but in a good way. The process matters. How it's prepared, how it's served. It becomes part of the enjoyment.
So it's not just about the drink anymore. It's about the whole moment.
That's exactly it. People talk about it as a brewing ritual or a mindful experience.
That's quite a shift from just dunking a tea bag and walking away.
It really is. And it's not just Japanese tea either. You'll find things like Malaysian teh tarik or Indian chai becoming more common as well.
So people are exploring tea the same way they explore food guao.
That's a good way to look at it. It's no longer just one tradition, it's a mix of different cultures.
That actually makes tea sound a lot more exciting than I expected.
It does change how you see it, doesn't it? Once you notice it, you realise it's everywhere.
I might actually try that next time, instead of coffee.
Careful, that's how it starts.
Something just crossed my mind. All these new flavours, all this experimenting. Does that mean people care less about health now? I mean, are people just eating more burgers and pizzas, just in fancier ways?
That's a fair question. It can look like that from the outside, but if you look a bit closer, there's something else going on at the same time.
Go on.
People are starting to care more about what's actually in their food, not just the flavour, but the ingredients themselves.
So not just how it tastes, but where it comes from.
Exactly, and also how it's made. There's a growing awareness of things like ultra-processed food.
Ultra-processed? That sounds a bit worrying already.
That's why some people are moving in the opposite direction. They want food that feels more real, I suppose.
Real, as in less packaging, less factory, that kind of thing.
That's part of it, but also ingredients you can actually recognise, things you could imagine cooking with yourself.
That sounds like a very basic requirement, but I guess it's not that common anymore.
That's the strange part. It used to be normal, now it feels almost like a trend again. At places like Borough Market, you'll notice more stalls focusing on simple, traditional ingredients, things like proper butter, or even beef dripping and duck fat.
That sounds quite old school.
It is, but people are rediscovering it. They're realising those ingredients bring a different kind of flavour.
So instead of replacing things, they're going back to them.
That's right. There's also more interest in things like raw milk or locally sourced products.
Raw milk? That sounds a bit intense.
It does sound a bit extreme, but for some people, that's the point. It feels closer to the source.
I didn't expect people to care this much, to be honest.
It's partly about health, but also about trust. People want to know what they're eating.
That makes sense. If you're cooking more from scratch, you'd naturally think about ingredients more.
Exactly. Cooking from scratch has become more appealing again. It gives people a sense of control.
I feel slightly guilty now, thinking about all the ready meals I've had.
No judgment, honestly. It's more about balance than perfection.
Still, it's interesting how things are moving in both directions. More convenience, but also more awareness.
That contrast is probably what defines the food scene now. It's not one trend, it's several happening at once.
I suppose that makes it more human in a way.
Exactly. People aren't just following rules anymore. They're making choices that fit their lives.
This is making me rethink quite a few things, especially breakfast. Because I'll be honest, most days I just grab a coffee and head out. That's basically it. Sometimes I don't even sit down properly. It's just on the go.
That sounds very familiar, to be fair. A lot of people do that.
Which is why I always thought breakfast wasn't really a big deal anymore. People just skip it or replace it with brunch.
That was definitely the case for a while. Brunch had its moment, and quite a big one. But recently, things have been shifting again. In fact, some people are saying brunch is starting to feel a bit overdone.
Overdone? That's surprising.
There was a comment I saw not long ago saying something along the lines of breakfast is back.
That sounds almost dramatic, like a comeback story.
In a way, it is. people are starting to treat breakfast as something worth sitting down for again.
So not just coffee on the go, anymore?
Not for everyone, but there's definitely more of an effort now. You'll still see the quick options like a croissant or something sweet you can carry around, but at the same time, more people are choosing to actually sit down and have a proper meal.
When you say proper, what does that look like now?
It can be quite traditional, like a full English breakfast. Bacon, sausages, eggs, beans, the whole plate.
That sounds like a lot for the morning.
It is, but for some people, that's the point. It's about really fueling up for the day. Then on the other side, you've got lighter options. Things like plant-based breakfasts, scrambled tofu, grilled tomatoes.
That sounds more like something I'd go for.
And that's the thing, there's more range now. You can go heavy or you can go light, depending on how you feel.
So breakfast isn't disappearing, it's just evolving.
That's a nice way to put it. It's being given the attention it deserves again.
I like that idea. It feels a bit more intentional instead of just rushing through it.
Exactly. And it's not just about food. It's also a moment to pause, maybe even catch up with someone before the day gets busy.
That already sounds much better than standing with a coffee in one hand and checking emails.
It does, doesn't it? Though I suspect a lot of people are still doing both.
All right, maybe I need to rethink my mornings a little.
No need to change everything overnight. Even a small shift can make it feel different.
I feel like this has completely changed the way I look at food here. Because if I think back to what I had in mind before, it was all quite limited, wasn't it? But now we've talked about all these things, the flavours, the tea, even breakfast. It feels like a completely different picture.
It does come together quite nicely when you look at it like that. You've got people exploring new flavours, mixing things in ways they wouldn't have before. At the same time, there's this return to simpler ingredients, more attention to what goes into the food. And then something like breakfast, which people thought was disappearing, quietly finding its place again.
It's kind of funny, isn't it? All this time, people kept saying British food was boring, but it turns out we just weren't really paying attention.
That's often the case. The reputation stays the same even when reality moves on.
Now I'm actually curious to try some of these things. That sweet and spicy thing still sounds a bit risky, but also quite tempting.
That's usually how it starts. I'd probably go for a proper matcha, to be honest, just to see what the whole experience feels like.
That actually sounds like a good plan. I suppose the nice thing about all this is you don't have to understand everything straight away. Even just picking up a few phrases, like how people describe food, or how they talk about flavours, that already feels useful.
Exactly. Those little bits add up over time, and they tend to stay with you because they're tied to real situations.
All right, I think that's a good place to leave it for today. If you enjoyed this episode, feel free to share it with someone who still thinks British food is just fish and chips. And don't forget to follow the channel. We'll be back with another episode very soon.
We'll see you next time. Take care.